My name is Selena Mercer, and I'm 33. I'm a back-end developer, one of those people who builds the systems that keep everything else standing, even when the loud, flashy parts get all the credit. I've always liked working where the rules are clear: inputs, outputs, logic, consequences. The part I didn't expect was learning that the messiest system I'd ever maintain wouldn't be code at all. It would be the man living in my house smiling like nothing could ever collapse. His name is Aaron Caldwell. He's 29, and he calls himself a lifestyle curator. Not influencer, not content creator, not marketer. Curator. Like his entire existence is a gallery, and he's the one selecting what deserves to be seen. He curates brunches, outfits, playlists, even the angle of sunlight coming through the kitchen windows when he films. People think that kind of life is effortless, that it's all soft music and iced coffee and pretty captions. But effortless is expensive. And for the last 2 years, that expense had been quietly routed through me. We'd been together 3 years. The last 2 he lived in my house. My name on the mortgage, my name on the utilities, my name on every boring adult thing that keeps a home from turning into a pretty shell. He contributed vibes. Occasionally, he'd buy something absurdly overpriced from a boutique market and announce it like he'd brought home Sashingen. I told myself it balanced out. I told myself I loved how vibrant he was, how he could walk into a room and the room would tilt toward him. I was stable ground and he was weather. It worked until the weather started calling itself a hurricane and acting like my foundation owed it gratitude. The last 6 months he'd gotten mean about the same things he benefited from. My quiet nights in were depressing. My practical decisions were limiting. Even my job, the one paying for everything, became a punchline. His friends would come over, a swirl of curated laughter and expensive scents, drinking wine I'd bought, and looking at me with that polite pity people reserve for furniture, functional, forgettable, always expected to stay in place. And then Tiana Rivers showed up. Aaron introduced her like a miracle that had finally found him again. "This is Tiana," he'd said, eyes shining. "She's a brand strategist, like the real deal." Tiana was 30 sharp, glowing with that kind of confidence that doesn't ask for space, it takes it. Linen trousers, sleek hair, the kind of smile that could be friendly or predatory, depending on what you needed to believe. Aaron said she could see his potential, that she knew how to position him. He didn't mention at first that she was his ex-girlfriend. I learned that later, the way you learn about cracks in glass, by noticing how carefully someone avoids touching a certain spot. After Tiana arrived, Aaron's spending started moving differently. Not just more, but bolder. Like he wanted the numbers to intimidate me, like it thrilled him to do things on my dime and dare me to say anything about it. I might have missed it longer if I hadn't gone looking for something completely ordinary. A bank notification. An alert I almost deleted. A charge posted to an account I rarely used. An old everything card, the one I'd opened years ago and kept for emergencies. I clicked into it out of habit, expecting some tiny autopay I'd forgotten. Instead, I saw a statement total that made my brain pause like a loading screen. $15, $300, 1 month. I didn't panic, I didn't scream, I just stared at it, the way I stare at a corrupted log file, knowing the truth is there, knowing I'll find it, knowing the system won't lie if I read it carefully enough. There it was, line by line. A $2,200 strategy weekend at the Meridian Hotel. An $850 client dinner at a place I'd never heard of. $5,000 consulting fee. $3,000 brand aesthetics. A designer boutique run that could have paid for a semester of someone's college tuition. Smaller charges too. Spa days, high-end lunches, networking bottle service. It wasn't just money, it was a pattern. A lifestyle being siphoned out of my account like it was a natural resource. The worst part wasn't even the number. It was the little details that made it personal. The Meridian weekend when I'd been at home eating leftovers and answering a late-night work ticket because a production system was glitching. The dinner when Aaron had told me he was deep in flow and didn't want to be disturbed. I printed the statement. Not because paper makes it more real, but because paper has weight. Paper is something you can hold up in front of someone who's been floating above consequences for too long. He came home around 10, smelling like champagne and expensive cologne that wasn't mine. He walked in like the house was a stage and I was part of the set. He didn't even look guilty, because guilt requires acknowledging the other person exists. "Hey," I said calm and held up the statement. "We need to talk about this bill." He glanced at it, and his lip curled, meant to be playful, but there was something ugly underneath, like contempt wearing a smile. Ugh, finance really, Selena. Finance. It's not finance, I said. It's $15,000. He shrugged like the number bored him. It's startup costs. Tiana's building my brand. You have to spend money to make money. I kept my voice even. You spent $200 at a hotel with her. Aaron's eyes flashed annoyed that I'd gotten specific. It was a strategy session, he snapped. We were mapping out content, something you wouldn't understand. It landed exactly where he wanted it to, a jab meant to make me feel small, technical, plain, like my brain was only useful when it served him. I looked at him, really looked at him, the way his confidence sat too comfortably in my living room, the way he spoke like my money was already his, the way he'd turned my stability into something he resented while still feeding off it. This is my money, I said quietly. You're spending it on your ex-girlfriend. He stopped moving. Then he laughed, cold, sharp, like he'd been waiting for me to finally say the quiet part out loud. He stepped closer, so close I could see the shine of his skincare routine, the practiced perfection of him. So what if I am, he whispered, and there was ice in it. What are you going to do about it, Selena? You're too predictable, too boring. His smile widened as if cruelty was a private joke. You'd never leave someone like me. You could never get someone like me again. I expected pain. I expected rage. What I felt instead was the fog clearing, the mirage evaporating, like a screen flickering off and revealing the empty room behind it. I gave him a small, sad smile. You're right, Aaron. His face lit up instantly, the smug victory of a person who thinks they've pressed the right button and locked you back into place. He reached out and patted my cheek like I was a compliant child. Good, he said. Now be a doll and bring me a glass of wine. Tiana has me on this new schedule and I'm exhausted. Of course, I said. I went to the kitchen. I didn't pour wine. I didn't slam cabinets. I didn't cry. I walked past the glasses like they didn't exist and went into my office, closing the door with the soft click of a decision being finalized. I sat at my desk, the statement still in my hand, and felt something settle in my chest. Quiet, solid, irreversible. The system was corrupt. So I did what I always do. When something breaks, I started building a new one. I opened my laptop and made my first call. Not to a friend, not to a therapist, to a lawyer. And behind that office door with Aaron, out in the living room, believing he'd won, I began writing the kind of plan that doesn't make noise until it's too late to stop it. It's strange how quickly people reveal themselves when they think they've broken you. The morning after our conversation, I apologized. Not because I meant it, but because I wanted to see how far Aaron would let himself go once he believed resistance was gone. I told him I'd been stressed, that I didn't really understand branding, that he was right, and I needed to be more supportive. I said the words slowly, carefully, like I was reading from a script written for someone else. He accepted the apology with the kind of satisfaction that made my stomach turn, not relief, not reconciliation, but triumph. From that moment on, he stopped pretending. He became expansive, loud, entitled in a way that felt almost experimental, like he was testing the limits of what I'd tolerate now that he thought he'd proven something. He started calling my house our space out loud on camera, even though he'd never once contributed to it. He rearranged furniture for better angles. He turned my kitchen into a permanent staging area. My living room became a revolving door of influencer friends and curated strangers who didn't bother learning my name. And I let it happen. I nodded. I smiled. I moved through my own house like a guest who didn't want to be in the way. Selena, can you pick up my dry cleaning? He'd say, already turning back to his phone. Selena, the pool filter sounds weird. Can you fix it? It's messing with the audio. Selena, can you grab ice? We're going live in 5. I always said yes, always of course, always calm. What he didn't see was how methodical I was becoming. I documented everything, quietly, relentlessly. Every catered order charged to my account. Every overnight guest. Every time Tiana showed up, like she belonged there, barefoot on my deck, wearing sunglasses, she left behind like markers. The security cameras did most of the work for me. I'd installed them years ago, after a package theft, never imagining how useful they'd be for something like this. The footage was clean, time-stamped, indisputable. While Aaron hosted poolside brunches and filmed reels about abundance, I was building a file that told a very different story. 3 days after the apology, I met Helen. She was exactly the kind of lawyer you want when you're done being underestimated. Sharp, efficient, not interested in drama, only outcomes. I laid everything out: the house, purchase, the lack of lease, the credit card, the charges, the ex-girlfriend, the behavior. She didn't interrupt, just took notes and nodded, occasionally asking a question so precise it made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in months. When I finished, she leaned back and folded her hands. "The house is yours," she said plainly. "Bought before he moved in. Paid for entirely by you. He's a tenant at will at best. No lease, no equity, no rights beyond notice." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief exactly, more like confirmation. "And the credit card?" I asked. She gave me a look that wasn't surprised at all. "Fraudulent use. Especially since you didn't authorize these specific expenses. We'll document everything." Legal, clean, predictable. That night I met Julianne, the realtor. She was recommended by Helen, which already told me enough. Julianne had eyes like she could calculate profit margins just by standing in a room. She walked through my house with a calm, professional smile, stepping around ring lights and half-empty champagne flutes like they were invisible. "It's a great property," she said, "but timing will be important." "I know," I replied. "I want it done carefully." She glanced at me, or strategically. I smiled for real this time. We signed the listing agreement a week later. By then, Aaron had fully leaned into the fantasy that he owned me. He told people the car was his now that I'd given it to him as an apology. He introduced Tiana as part of the team and let her lounge by my pool like she was auditioning for permanence. He talked about expansion, about how this house was just the beginning. I listened, I documented, I waited. Saturday arrived, bright and perfect, the kind of day that makes everything look intentional. Aaron had planned one of his biggest brunches yet. 30 influencers catered food, branded cocktails, music, thumping through speakers I'd paid for. At exactly 12:45 p.m. I changed clothes. I put on a suit I hadn't worn in months. Not dramatic, not flashy, just sharp enough to remind myself who I was before I let someone else rewrite the narrative. At 1:00 p.m. on the dot, a tasteful, expensive SUV pulled into the driveway. Aaron frowned when he saw me step outside. "Where are you going?" he asked. "And why are you dressed like that? You look intense." I didn't answer. Julianne stepped out first, leather-bound folder in hand, followed by a well-dressed couple in their 50s. Calm, curious, serious buyers. She smiled at me like we were old colleagues. "Selena, good to see you." Then she turned eyes landing on Aaron, who was suddenly very still. "And this must be the current resident," she said pleasantly. The music seemed to dim without anyone touching it. Conversations stalled. Phones lowered. I spoke clearly, calmly, so everyone could hear. "This is Julianne from Premier Properties," I said. "And these are the Thompsons. They're here for the 1 o'clock private viewing." Aaron blinked. Viewing. Julianne stepped forward, beaming. "Selena has decided to sell the property. We're starting with the outdoor spaces, so if you and your guests could clear the pool deck, that would be wonderful. We need to show the cabana." The silence that followed was exquisite. 30 people who'd been recording content seconds ago now stood frozen, holding phones like useless relics. Tiana straightened her smile, faltering. Someone near the bar quietly set down a mimosa. Aaron's voice cracked. "You can't be serious." I met his eyes, the same calm expression I'd worn the night he thought he'd crushed me. "I told you," I said softly. "You were right. I'd never leave you." His confusion flickered into panic. "But the house," I continued, turning toward the buyers. "It's just an asset, and I'm liquidating it." I gestured toward the sliding doors. "If you'll follow me, the master suite gets beautiful light this time of day." As I walked away, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could hear it, the party collapsing behind me, the illusion cracking in real time, the sound of a system finally rejecting corrupted data. And this time there was no undo button. The silence lingered longer than it should have. It wasn't dramatic at first, no screaming, no shouting, just a collective pause, like everyone's brain was trying to buffer what they'd just heard. 30 people who'd been laughing and posing moments earlier now stood around my pool holding glasses they'd forgotten to sip from phones, hovering uselessly in their hands. Aaron was the first to break. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice sharp but already thinning at the edges. "You can't just do this in front of everyone." "I'm not," I said evenly. "I'm showing my house." Julianne didn't miss a beat. She gestured politely toward the cabana, already slipping into her professional rhythm. "If we could start here, please. Outdoor entertaining spaces add tremendous value." Tiana stood up slowly from one of the loungers, her movements deliberate, controlled, like she was deciding whether to fight or flee. She tugged the borrowed robe tighter around herself, eyes flicking between Aaron and me, recalculating her position in real time. "This is insane," Aaron muttered. "You're embarrassing me." I turned to him, keeping my voice low but audible. "You embarrassed yourself. I just stopped paying for the set." That was when the first influencer quietly said, "I think I have to go." Another followed, then another. The exodus wasn't loud, it was efficient. People gathered their bags, their sunglasses, their dignity. No one wanted to be associated with a narrative collapsing on camera. This wasn't content anymore. This was risk. Within minutes, the pool deck cleared, like someone had pulled a fire alarm. Tiana disappeared inside, then re-emerged moments later with her bag, not looking at Aaron as she passed him. "Call me," he said desperately. She didn't respond. Julianne and the Thompsons toured the house with professional politeness, stepping around the wreckage of what had been a brand 30 minutes earlier. Aaron followed us at a distance, spiraling, alternating between rage and disbelief. After the buyers left, the storm finally broke. "You did this to humiliate me," he screamed, grabbing a ceramic vase from the console table, the one he'd bought for himself with my card, and hurling it against the wall. It shattered spectacularly. "You think you can just erase me?" I stood in the entryway and didn't flinch. "This isn't erasure," I said. "It's correction." He advanced on me, face red, hands shaking. "You can't sell my home." "It was never your home," I replied. "It was my patience." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded document. "This is a formal 30-day notice to vacate," I said calmly. "Drafted by my lawyer. You have until the 15th of next month." His mouth opened closed. 30 days. His voice cracked. "Where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged gently. "I'm sure you and Tiana can strategize something." I left that night, booked a hotel. I wasn't staying in a house with someone who'd just realized he'd lost control. The next 30 days were a masterclass in entitlement. Phase 1, the victim. He didn't pack, didn't plan. Instead, he called his mother. She rang me sobbing 2 days later. "Selena, please. He's fragile. You're his anchor." "I'm selling my house," I replied. "Your son has notice." She called me heartless. Phase 2, seduction. The texts started coming late at night. Apologies, photos, promises of change, of jobs, of love rediscovered. I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to Helen. Phase 3 arrived quietly, and that was the most dangerous part. I'd been coordinating with Julianne for the open house. We needed to ensure Aaron couldn't sabotage it. So on Friday night, after checking the security feed and seeing the house empty, I drove over. The smell hit me the second I opened the door. Mildew. I stepped into the living room and froze. Water dripped from the ceiling. The plaster sagged. I ran upstairs to the master bath and found the freestanding tub overflowing water spilling over hardwood floors that had already begun to warp. It was deliberate, calculated. My phone buzzed. A text from Aaron. "OMG, Selena, the tub overflowed. Total disaster. Guess the house wants us to stay." My hands shook, but only for a second. Then I made 3 calls. Insurance, remediation, and Helen. When she heard, she exhaled slowly. "This is no longer civil," she said. "This is property damage." I closed my eyes. Aaron thought he'd delayed the inevitable. He didn't realize he had just accelerated it. After the flood, something in Aaron shifted. Not remorse, not fear. Certainty. He truly believed he'd forced my hand, that the damage would stall the sale, drain my resolve, and corner me into negotiation. He moved through the house like a man who thought he'd outsmarted the system, posting vague stories about fighting for what's yours and protecting your home from negativity. Every caption was a performance. Every smile was brittle. I didn't respond. I let the insurance adjusters, the remediation crew, and my lawyer handle the reality, while I watched the security feed from a hotel room that smelled like neutral detergent and freedom. The estimate came back worse than I'd hoped, over $30,000 in damage. Hardwood ruined, ceiling gutted, built-ins warped beyond repair, and the evidence was clean. The footage showed Aaron leaving the house hours before the text. The messages framed his surprise perfectly. The contractor's report confirmed the drain had been intentionally blocked. Helen didn't sound angry when she called. She sounded satisfied. "This gives us cause," she said. "We're filing for an emergency writ of possession." The 30-day notice becomes irrelevant. That was when Aaron's tactics escalated. The victim phase returned briefly long voicemails, where his voice cracked just enough to sound fragile. He talked about his childhood, about pressure, about how he felt unseen. He apologized without actually apologizing, circling the idea of responsibility without touching it. When that didn't work, he switched masks. Anger, blame, threats. He texted that he'd ruin my reputation, that he'd tell everyone I was abusive, controlling, cold. He accused me of jealousy, of being threatened by Tiana, by his potential. I saved every message, every accusation, every contradiction. Then came bargaining. "I'll leave quietly," he wrote one night at 2:13 a.m. "Just give me 6 months. I need time. I need help." I didn't reply. What finally broke the illusion for him was silence. Not rage, not argument. Silence that didn't bend. The court moved faster than he expected. The judge reviewed the evidence, photos, footage, contractor estimates, texts, and signed the order without hesitation. Emergency possession. Enforced. Helen called me the morning it was finalized. "Tomorrow," she said. 8 a.m. "Be there if you want closure, or don't. Either way, it's happening." I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, I drove to the house just after 7:30. The sky was clear, the neighborhood quiet. I parked down the street and waited. At 8 on the dot, 2 sheriff's deputies pulled up, followed by a moving truck I'd arranged weeks earlier, quietly, just in case. Procedure, preparation. Aaron opened the door wearing a silk robe phone, already in his hand, smug smile preloaded. "Selena," he said, "come to negotiate." His smile died when he saw the uniforms. "Ma'am," one of the deputies said, calm but firm. "Are you Aaron Caldwell?" "Yes," he snapped. "What is this?" "We have a writ of possession for this property," the deputy continued. "You are no longer a legal resident. You have 1 hour to gather personal necessities. The rest will be removed." Aaron turned to me, eyes wild. "You did this. You ruined me." "No," I said quietly. "You did." He tried calling Tiana, straight to voicemail. He tried his mother. No answer. The deputies didn't rush him. They didn't argue. They simply waited. At 9, the movers arrived. They worked efficiently, boxing clothes, electronics, decor. Everything he'd curated dismantled piece by piece. The house emptied like a set being struck after a show that closed early. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Aaron stood on the lawn, holding a duffel bag robe, flapping in the breeze, face blotchy with rage and disbelief. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I handed the movers the storage unit key I'd prepaid for. 1 month, I said. After that, it's his problem. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph. Relief. People think the worst moment is the confrontation. It isn't. The worst moment is the quiet realization that someone you trusted is willing to destroy something just to avoid losing control. That they'd rather burn the house down than walk out with dignity. After eviction day, I thought the worst was over. The house was finally empty. The noise was gone. The air felt still again. But the damage he'd done physically and financially was only beginning to surface. The remediation team had torn out the living room ceiling and half the master bathroom. Fans roared day and night, pulling moisture out of the walls like the house itself was exhaling trauma. The hardwood floors were cupped beyond repair. The built-in shelving I'd commissioned years earlier, ruined. Every room smelled faintly of damp wood and disinfectant. The sale was paused. Not canceled, paused. And that mattered. Aaron thought the flood was his ace card, his final childish middle finger. In his mind, he'd forced me into a corner, insurance battles, delays, exhaustion. He believed I'd eventually cave just to make it stop. What he didn't understand was that I build systems for a living. And systems don't respond to emotion. They respond to inputs. The insurance company called it suspicious. The adjuster used that careful tone people use when they already know the answer but need the paperwork to catch up. I sent them everything. The timestamps, the footage, the text where Aaron pretended surprise hours after leaving the water running. They approved the claim but flagged a portion as deliberate damage. That meant deductible, out-of-pocket costs, which meant liability. Helen laid it out cleanly during our next meeting. The fraudulent charges are one case, she said. The flood is another. Together they're well within small claims limits, and given the evidence, he doesn't have a defense. I nodded calm on the outside, simmering underneath. How much, I asked. She slid a paper across the table. $25,000. The number sat there neat and final. File it, I said. Aaron never responded to the summons. He never showed up to court. He was still spinning his own version of reality, posting cryptic stories from his mother's house, talking about rebirth and injustice and how strong he was for surviving toxicity. His followers thinned quietly like people backing away from a fire they didn't want to be near. The judge ruled in my favor by default. A full judgment. Legally binding. Enforceable. I sent it to collections the same day. Not out of cruelty. Out of closure. The house repairs took another month. I approved every invoice without flinching. Money can be earned back. Peace is harder to replace. When the last coat of paint dried and the floors were finally smooth again, Julianne relisted the property. It sold. Not at the price it should have, but at a price I accepted gladly. I signed the closing documents without ceremony, handed over the keys, and walked out of that house for the last time, knowing something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't just free of Aaron. I was free of the version of myself who thought endurance was the same thing as love. 2 months after the flood, my life looked nothing like it had before, and that was intentional. I was living in a rented condo downtown, all glass and clean lines and silence. No echo of parties. No lingering scent of someone else's cologne. Just space. Honest space. I slept with the windows cracked and woke up without bracing myself for conflict. That alone felt like wealth. But the story wasn't finished yet. The legal machinery kept moving, indifferent to Aaron's emotions posts or disappearing act. Collections had begun their work, methodical, relentless. Judgments don't care about aesthetics or branding. They don't respond to captions. They respond to numbers. Aaron tried reaching out once more after the judgment hit his credit. This time there was no performance, no manipulation. Just panic. He left a voicemail that was almost unrecognizable. Voice hoarse, breathing. Uneven words, tumbling over each other as he asked how this could happen, how I could do this to him, how he'd never be able to rent anywhere now, how his life was basically over. I listened once, then I deleted it, because this wasn't happening to him. It was happening because of him. The neighbors from my old street messaged, occasionally filling in details I hadn't asked for but appreciated anyway. Aaron had been back once, weeks after the eviction, standing on the sidewalk, staring at the house like it might remember him. The new owners hadn't recognized him. Why would they? He was just a stranger lingering too long near someone else's property. There was something poetic about that. I ran into Julianne for coffee after the sale finalized. She raised her cup in a small toast. You handled that better than most people would. I didn't handle it, I said. I documented it. She laughed. That's handling. At night, when the city hummed outside my windows, I replayed certain moments, not with regret, but with clarity. The night he laughed at me. The way he'd said I was too boring to leave him. How confident he'd been that I'd always stay. He hadn't understood something fundamental. Predictable doesn't mean powerless. It means prepared. Stop. Part 7. The aftermath. Here's what happens after the noise stops. The house was gone. Sold. Someone else's memories now. The judgment sat in a system that would follow Aaron for years on every application, every background check, every attempt to start over without accountability. It wasn't revenge. It was a record. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved back into his childhood bedroom with his mother, that his influencer friends had quietly unfollowed him when the content dried up, that Tiana had blocked him everywhere, no farewell, no explanation, just absence. Funny how quickly people disappear when the money does. His career couldn't survive without the house as a backdrop. Turns out you can't curate abundance from a twin bed with a floral comforter. His following dwindled. Engagement collapsed, sponsorships vanished. A lifestyle built on illusion doesn't weather reality well. As for me, I started dating again, not recklessly, not desperately, carefully, thoughtfully. I met someone through a friend, a man who asked questions and listened to the answers, who didn't confuse confidence with entitlement or attention with affection. No grand declarations, just consistency. He once asked why I seemed so calm about everything I'd been through. I thought about it before answering. Because I didn't win by being louder, I said. I won by being accurate. Aaron had thought strength looked like chaos, like domination, like taking up space and daring people to challenge it. He forgot something crucial. I'm the one who builds systems. I'm the one who documents. I'm the one who plans for failure and then designs around it. He thought he was a storm. He never realized I was the person who builds storm shelters.